So in this video, what we're going to do is we're going to talk about the difference between rudimentary practice and creative practice. And what I want to do here is I want to show you an example of what I call meandering and how to do it and how to use it in your playing. So let's just start off by talking about rudimentary practice. Let's say you've learned how to play a scale, right? Either from me or whoever it might be. You've learned how to play the first position of minor pentatonic often, we call it, which looks like this. Right? In whatever capacity you practice that in. Now, rudimentary practice really means what we're going to be doing is the same thing over and over and over to try and develop technique and comfort and feel and, all of these different kinds of things. And it's absolutely essential, no doubt about it. But oftentimes what happens is we spend so much time practicing those things, we forget to actually explore what the guitar sounds like and what it feels like to try and move out of that standard rudimentary practice. So what I came up with a long time ago was a technique that I call meandering. And basically what meandering tries to do is to teach you to break out of that same practice regimen that you're doing when you practice up and down. So let's say, for instance, with meandering, what we're going to do is we're going to just use this position. Now, if you know other positions and you're really good at connecting them together, or you know another scale, maybe you know something about your modes or something, you can use this in anything. I'm just going to keep this as straightforward as possible. So what you do is you use this position that you know. Let's say you only know one position. You only know this one. But instead of just playing it up and down like this, what we're going to do is we're going to try and turn off our brain, and we're just going to try and play anything and everything that we possibly can at a tempo without stopping. So the rule with this meandering is we don't want to stop. Now, I'm going to set the metronome at 100 beats per minute, but you could set this at anything. And finding the right tempo is really, really important. Because if you set it at a tempo that's too fast, you're going to wind up realizing that you're either playing very sloppily or you have to keep stopping because your brain just shuts down. Now, when you first start doing this, that might happen a lot anyway because it's brand new to you. But let me show you what I mean by meandering. So what I'm going to do is start my metronome. And what I'm going to do is at that speed of 100, whoop, let me stop that for a second there. At the speed of 100, not 140, okay? There we go. At the speed of 100, I'm going to start moving at eighth notes, which means I'm going to play 2 per click. Okay, so if this is the, I want to do this. And again, if 100 is too fast, that's okay. Let's slow it down to 80. Let's slow it down to 60. Let's slow it down to whatever you need to slow it down to be able to make this effective. Now, I'm going to show it to you at 100 just so I don't waste too much of your time here. Okay, so I'm going to get the metronome going. And here I go. Okay, now you get the idea. Let me stop that metronome there. There we go. So it's all over the place, right? I'm just trying to move without thought. Okay, so what I'm doing is I'm developing a part of my brain that isn't in the rudimentary section. Now, as I continue doing this, what's great about meandering is not only am I learning how to move in all these different pathways, if you will, right? All these different roadmaps of just jumping over things and moving back and forth. And I'm forcing myself to get out of that comfort zone of just playing toward the floor and toward the ceiling. Okay? But the other thing that I start realizing is how I'm picking, right? Now, there's no rhyme or reason to this right now. It's supposed to be a bit chaotic, and that's okay. As long as it's controlled, right? You're doing it at a speed that you can actually handle. So what we do is we start learning that we can actually jump over and create something that sounds completely unique, okay? Now, what I'm going to do just to show you, let's say I slowed this down to 80. Okay, let me get my metronome there. There we go. So I start my metronome. Now, obviously, as you continue doing this, okay, all of these bizarre movements of jumping over each other and moving around are going to become more rudimentary, right? They're going to become more comfortable as you keep doing them because your hands have gotten used to some of these unusual motions that you're making throughout this position, which is exactly what should happen. So as you continue practicing, the brain kind of turns back on again, and you start becoming aware of some of these movements and how they sound and how they feel. And I don't want you to get caught up in, alternate picking and all these other things that are certainly very important, but they're not the focus right now. The focus is just training yourself how to move. Now, if you know more than one position, let's say you know the first position of A minor pentatonic and you know the second position. Well, then what you can do is connect those together and start doing something like this. Now, at this point, that's not going to sound overly musical, and it's not supposed to be. It's supposed to be training you to be able to move. Now, you'll notice that I did use a little bit of sliding and some things like that. Nothing wrong with that at all. If you start using some of those kinds of effects in the motion of the meandering, that's great, right? That's another element that we can add in. But we're just trying to train ourselves to be able to move, because oftentimes when we go to try and solo, and we're not used to this sort of thing, we just play up and down the scale, right? You might go, right? And I'm not making light of that. I'm saying I've done it a million times in my life, right? But what this is trying to do is, instead of playing with blinders on, where we just play down and up, and then we move over to the next position and just play down and up in some capacity, we're trying to learn to use some of this motion as well, more of a horizontal motion, okay? Instead of just playing vertically. And we're also learning how to kind of jump over things to make more of what I refer to as an intervallic movement. It just doesn't sound the same as everything else. So in this video, what I'd like you to do is start doing that. Dial in a tempo that works for you. And don't do the ego thing. It doesn't make any difference if you have to set it at 60 or 50 or anything like that. Don't worry about it. Just find a tempo that works for you and start practicing this thing. And then in the next video, what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you how to start creating some phrases out of this meandering.